the appeals of Tim Kawakami's podcast is that he interviews the biggest names in sports.
Mm-hmm.
Has a good relationship with Steve Kerr, Joe Lacob, Kyle Shanahan, John Lynch, Jim Harbaugh. He's had on a bunch of times, and he gets good interviews out of these guys. We had Joe Lacob on, and I was listening to the Joe Lacob interview on the way in, and I'm not going to get into the minutia of the Warriors situation. I want to talk about some of the Joe Lacob stuff that matters on an NBA level. He, in that interview with Tim Kawakami, again, this is Warriors owner Joe Lacob, said that thrilled with the aprons. You could tell. Just smitten that he has an excuse to get below the tax, or the first apron, certainly.
Okay.
I didn't realize they had gotten under the tax line.
Yeah.
That's for a team that was paying $500,000 for their roster to now. I think they're just over the tax now.
Yeah, but I mean, that's a far cry from the $176 million or whatever they paid just in luxury tax last year, and another like $220 in salary.
Insane.
It was like they were almost $400 million compared to the Kings at like 147.
He said the last 3 years, the last 4 years, whatever, I think since KD left, he said they've paid like $700 million just in luxury tax.
Oh
my God. So, but he says in there, if you're going to compete and win, no problem doing that.
Yeah.
But we missed the playoffs last year, so we're not doing it. All right, it makes sense. But anyways, he talks about how the NBA is trending toward the NFL in terms of parity.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the goal of every league.
Yeah.
Right? You want, in an ideal world, every team goes 500, and then every team is exactly the same, and every playoff series goes to 7 games, and it's thrilling. But I was thinking about that, and I don't think that's right. I don't think parity is good. I think there needs to be, in the NBA specifically, I don't necessarily feel this way about the NFL, but in the NBA specifically, I think parity lends itself to a Heat Nuggets finals where you have a bunch of people who don't care, and it wasn't a particularly good series. Or you have the Mavericks coming out of the West to face a Boston team that they had no business facing. Like they weren't good enough, and Boston steamrolls them. And I think overall the NBA is just better when there's that very clear villain, or those two very clear teams that everybody wants to see fall.
Everyone's chasing.
Yeah, and then if those two teams don't fall in the conference in the playoffs leading up to the finals, then you have a great finals matchup between these two titans. That's what I think that's when I think the NBA is at its most fun.
I kind of feel like I get what you're saying. Parity is one thing, but I want a competitive balance, right? I think that if you look in the league, there are so many games where you're watching the Kings play some random team, whoever it might be. And they don't.
The Charlotte Hornets are the most random team.
Okay, Charlotte. But even like the Atlanta Hawks, they'll go to Atlanta, and there's 8,000 fans, and there's no vibe, and there's nothing. And you're like, what is happening? Because you go to a game in Sacramento, and outside of a couple of years where it's, the team had been so bad for so long and had tried to move and all these things.
Yeah.
But outside of that, like the stadium is usually packed, and the vibe is cool. And it's fun. And, we've talked about this. Like Scott Moak will tell you, like, their goal is that every single night they understand that there are probably a couple of hundred kids that are at a game for the first time ever. And you need to make a first impression and get them to love coming to a game. Like right then, you have one opportunity to put a stamp on something, to make it feel like it's somewhere they want to keep coming back to. And they cater to that. The fact that there are people who have never been to a game who are spending so much of their hard-earned money, or somebody is spending so much hard-earned money to get people there to a game, and you need to give them an experience. So, yeah, I feel like you look around the league, though, and that's not the way it is everywhere. And there are fan bases that don't show up like Sacramento. And it's really, really odd to see that. But you need to cherish it in Sacramento and understand that. So I wish, though, that the competitive balance was there, because for the Kings to go into the luxury tax and to get to the second apron and to do all that stuff, they have to have a team that's going to make the second or third round. In the NBA,
Yeah, minimum.
you don't break even unless you make it to the first round. And sometimes, as a franchise, you don't even break even until the second round. And guys like Lakeup are willing to spend all this money. He's taking a huge loss to win. That's what like being a billionaire should be about. It's like, hey, I've got this fun toy that I keep, changing the paint on this really expensive car just because I can.
Right.
And because I want it to look different and be cool.
Sure.
But like when it comes to your sports team, that's where like I do get that it's a business, and I do get that a lot of the teams in the NBA are legacy teams that are teams that have been handed down from family members and stuff, and so maybe you don't have the billions to spend and you can't keep up with the Joneses. But that's I do like I like parity a little bit, but I like competitive fairness where everyone has at least an opportunity that they can spend.
Yeah, and I think that's where eventually, because year 1 and maybe even year 2 and 3 is about teams maneuvering to figure out how to operate within this new CBA, this new system where the aprons create higher penalties.
Yeah,
for being above the tax. And I think what we'll see are teams like Charlotte, Atlanta, Portland, I guess. Although Portland's been good recently, but anyways, teams these smaller market teams having a chance to go get Brandon Ingram, because hey, you don't have to max out Brandon Ingram now to get him on your team, because the good teams are already expensive and they're not going to go add a Brandon Ingram to go to the second apron because they don't think Brandon Ingram's going to get him over the top. And I think that's maybe what we'll see play out. But I think ultimately in the NBA, I think the best thing that could happen for just kind of not necessarily the health of the league, but just as a fan to get fired up, is if Boston goes and repeats next year. And they become this team that is now this juggernaut. Because I think there are still people who look at Boston from this year and go, yeah, but I mean, who did they play? I mean,
for some reason you feel it with that team. I don't know what it is about that team where you're like, I mean, they're really, really, really good.
They're awesome.
But they have yet to reach like legendary status,
which is
very strange because they have made it deep in the playoffs multiple times.
Yeah.
But now they get over the hump and you're like, okay.
Well, and that's why I think they need to win another one or make another deep run, because you had Golden State, who was god awful forever. And then they lose in the second round in 2014 or 2013, and they lose in the first round in 2014, win that title in 2015. And I was down in Arizona at this time, but the people I knew and I was friends with were like, hell yeah, that's awesome. A new team won. Hey, dude, good for you. Nice. But then the next year they start 24-0. And all this talk of them chasing 72-10 and having the unanimous MVP, it became more like, okay, this is old now. This kind of getting tired of this. And then they smoke the 3-1 lead, and then they get Kevin Durant, and it was just downhill from there. That's where I think Boston is still on that rise. Boston's still like that. Hey, they made it over the hump. Nice. And there are still people going, yeah, but they played Indiana, who wasn't ready. The Sixers, or not the Sixers. The Sixers were banged up. They played Miami, who didn't have Jimmy Butler. Like, just nah. So I think if they go win this year, this next season, then they'll fall into that villain category where, okay, that's what everybody's chasing. Now everybody's locked into the finals to see if somebody can knock off Boston.
That's possible. For me, I think the problem too with Boston is every single position they have is like stacked. Like when they go out and they add Porzingis, and for some reason Porzingis worked there where he hasn't been a true winner in other spots. He just figured it out, or the team around him was so good that they figured it out. But you have, they go out, they extend Derek White, they extend Drew Holiday, they extend all of their talent is there forever. This team is going to be really good. They're going to pay for it for sure. And they're not going to have draft picks. There's going to be the second apron is like their name now.
It's
like the Boston second apron Celtics.
It's so funny hearing all these teams talk about the second apron, and then you've got Boston with Jaylen Brown, $300+ million.
5 guys,
Jason
30
Tatum,
million.
$300+ million. And they're just dishing out these cuts. Like, wait a minute. Hey.
They just paid Sam Hauser 4-year 45. You're like, what? We're like, why are we paying him that much? What's happening? But I think my point is that they're the only team that's like this all of a sudden. Like
Yes.
there isn't another Boston Celtics. And when you got to like the Warriors in their heyday, there was always LeBron and the Cavs. And so, yeah, did we get bored of watching the same two teams battle in the finals like 4 consecutive seasons?
Mhm.
Yeah, that got boring.
Mhm.
But the fact that both you had no idea who was going to win because they were both so good that one team has the greatest player on earth, the other team has 3 or 4 of the greatest players on earth, and so there's this like epic battle. Like there has to be some other team that steps up and becomes that.
Yeah.
And as of today, I don't know who that would be. Like we can talk about the Denver Nuggets, but we all know that it's Denver Nuggets is like one superstar and realistically a bunch of guys who are just under all-star level. Like it's a whole bunch of like non-all-stars.
And then they lost Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, who was a player that when we would talk about the Nuggets, it was Jokic and Murray and Aaron Gordon and KCP. And now that KCP element is gone, and replacing it might not be super easy.
Well, that and they had Bruce Brown the year before, so you're starting to see sort of not. There are two ways that teams sort of fade. The first is that they get old. Sorry, Warriors, you got old. The second is that you have attrition. You lose players. Because anytime you win a championship, people now value your players more,
of course,
and they offer them more money, and you lose them. And it happens more in the NFL where a guy will, go win the MVP of the Super Bowl, and next thing you know, he gets some monster contract to go somewhere else and be really bad because he really wasn't that good. He just had a good day. But in the NBA, like you start losing pieces left and right, and you got to backfill. But the problem is that you won a championship, so now your salaries are climbing. The guys that you do have that you can pay, you're paying more than maybe you should. And so like the NBA has like a life cycle, and it's a very small life cycle, and there's not a way to replace. Even like the NFL has, like the 49ers are a linebacker factory. They're able to just create another one and another one and another one. They can find a 5th round pick who's a superstar. But the NBA isn't that way.
Right.
And so once you start losing pieces, it's very difficult to replace those pieces. And it's so parity. I don't know if it's going to be fully like the NFL, but I certainly think the aprons are going to help balance the field a little bit.
Yeah, I sure hope so. You were just talking about LeBron and those Cavs teams from 2015 to 2018. There's a universe not that much departed from this one where LeBron is sitting there with like 7 or 8 rings right now.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of wild.
I mean,
the 2017 Cavs are good as hell, dude. That's a really
I was in the locker
team.
room when they won
in 16.
Yeah, in Oakland.
Yeah.
Like Usher and Jamie Foxx were in the locker room where
sure.
like, hey, what's up, guys? Hey, what's happening? Like spraying champagne and stuff. I mean, it was wild to be in the locker room for that. I remember we were watching, me and Iman Shumpert were watching video of a Cleveland fan who stole a fire truck and was driving through Cleveland with a fire truck celebrating. And me and Iman Shumpert were watching video on my phone of this happening.
Yeah.
Like the whole vibe was crazy and stuff, but
if Kyrie and Kevin Love are healthy in 15, they could win that one.
Yeah.
They won in 16. Kevin Durant doesn't go to the Warriors, they might win the next 2 or 3.
Yeah. But see,
that's crazy.
You need a second villain. And as of right now, I think we can all look at the Celtics and go, they're going to be unmatched for a while.
Seems that way. Although maybe it's the Knicks.
Maybe.
I'm just all in on the Knicks.
Okay. You're all in on the
I'm
the Villanova 4.
They did all go to Villanova, huh? Yeah, they did. Jalen Brunson, Dante DiVincenzo, Mikal Bridges.
Yeah.
I'm missing one. Help me out. Josh Hart, thank you.
They all went to Villanova. Did you not know that, Kyle?
That's crazy. How does more people should talk about
Why
this.
is that not on a shirt?
That's crazy. Has anyone suggested that maybe Jay Wright become the coach?
That's that's a good idea. Yeah. Maybe Jay Wright. Yeah, I don't know.
I think we're on to something.